Everybody is dealing with something. And that's really why I want to share these stories, because the more stories we tell, the more people can relate to them, and hopefully we can help, get through their own struggle.
Yeah. No, it's super simple to do a podcast. You basically just need a couple of microphones and sit down and talk for a little while. So, yeah, cool. Was that a thumbs up that we're ready to go? Let's get started. So welcome to the Tattoos of My Soul podcast. I'm super happy to have you. I've got Becky Smiddy with us today. And it's funny how you and I got to know each other because I'm like a coffee addict. I'm like not even going to...
I totally understand that.
Yeah, not even going to pretend that I'm not. But you work downstairs at Winans, which is our local coffee shop here. And you see me like literally every single day, multiple times a day. And so we just kind of got to visiting when I would come in and talking, and you asked one day, like, what is Tattoos of My Soul? And I kind of started sharing with you. And I mentioned having a podcast where we kind of talk about, all different kinds of things, just all walks of life. And, usually we're talking to somebody that maybe has struggled with something and they're going to share how they have pulled through that. And you're like, well, hey, I might want to be a guest.
I have a story to tell.
Yeah. So that's basically how this came to be. But just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, and kind of, what you want to share.
I'm Becky Smiddy, and I'm originally from Wisconsin. Go Packers. And I have 4 children, and I've been married for 31 years. My husband's from Springfield. We met in Chicago. And that's how we ended up back here.
Yeah. What were you doing in Chicago?
I was actually working in retail.
Okay.
And wanted to start attending a church up there. And I was actually telemarketed on a Saturday morning for a new church plant that was started. So I went to the new church plant, started attending there, and David was hired as the associate pastor. But I was living in Chicago because being from Wisconsin, I wanted to be in a bigger city. So I was in the northern suburbs of Chicago living at the time, thinking that was where it was at.
Yeah.
It's a great town.
And so then you and your husband met, and he was like, how did you guys
He was hired
here?
as the associate pastor there. And I remember I had a boyfriend in high school who was married to a minister, and she would always say, Becky, don't ever marry a minister. Don't ever marry a minister. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was hired, and he was single, of course, at the time. And we became friends, and I just felt the nudging, Becky, this is the one. And I once again said, no way, God.
Yeah. Which is a lot of the times what we do, right?
I was an aerobics instructor at the time, thought I'd, marry somebody that was a jock.
Yeah.
And anyway.
Here comes a minister.
Yeah, right. Very nice one. But we became friends, and once we got married about a year and a half later in 1990.
Okay.
And came back to Springfield to begin to support Raise to go on the mission field.
Okay.
Because when I met him, he was bound or already preparing to go on the mission field.
Yeah.
And so I knew that if I married him, that would be something that we would do. And I knew that traveling's no problem. I studied in Germany when I was in college, so that was not something that I feared, and just felt at the time that it was the right path, that was something God might have for me.
Yeah.
So we came back to Springfield in 1994 to begin support raising.
Okay.
And that's how we came back here.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, and you said you have 4 kids. What's their ages?
I have a daughter who's going to be 30 in April. My oldest, she's a doctor in California. I have a son who's 27. He is in Columbus, and he's a computer science engineer. I have a son in Cincinnati who is an electrical engineer. He's 24. And then I have a 16-year-old daughter. She was our surprise baby. At age 40, so you can figure out how old I am.
Okay. Yeah, those are some smarty pants careers.
I know they are. Exactly. My kids are much smarter than I ever was or ever will be.
That's awesome. Very cool. So before we kind of dive into it, one of the first things that I always ask people when they come on the podcast is, because I'm a words person, I really just words inspire me, motivate me. What are words that have helped you through the years, and whatever you've been going through, words that you kind of live by, or you could motivational scripture, whatever it's been for you.
One thing, and this goes back to when I was a newer believer, I had a dream, and it was a dream that God wrote the word complete on my forehead. So complete, because at the time I was struggling, am I good enough? So that word complete is important to me.
Yeah.
And then be still and know that I am God. That one, my grandma was a Christian. She gave me her Bible. She had it on her wall in her kitchen. And then just as I've walked through my own faith journey, be still and know that I am God.
Yeah.
Just be still, Becky. Just chill out.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Right.
And I'll take care of it.
That's one that I've had to think about. I think we all have to like think about that as we go through life, because it's often, for me at least, when I'm going through something difficult, you can get so absorbed in the chaotic,
I got to do something.
Yes, everything's going on. It's so easy to do everything but be still. But a lot of the times when we are still and we can get quiet, that's when we hear from God, So I think that's so important. So let's just get into it. Tell me kind of your story and, what you wanted to share, what we kind of talked about when we were, talking over coffee. At the coffee shop.
Hi, I'm Molly Duncan, and I want to welcome you to Tattoos of My Soul. I want to tell you about the life-changing journal. I developed this journal after I went through my own series of traumatic events. I noticed over time, each day that I journaled, my anxiety and depression started decreasing, while my overall joy and peace and contentment were increasing. Get your journal today and watch how your perspective and your mindset and your life can improve just like mine did.
Start your life change today by going to tattoosofmysoul.com and ordering your personal journal. Remember, write it, wear it, and believe it.
I grew up in an alcoholic home. My dad was a salesman, so he was always out socializing with customers or whatever, and just knew at a young age that something wasn't right. Didn't know what it was, but I just felt the sadness starting like at age 3. And now that I can look back and see that, I went through another period of separation anxiety from my mom. I didn't want her to die because she was kind of like my stronghold. Didn't trust my dad. He wasn't violent, but he did have a temper. He had a loud, booming voice, and if he yelled or if he snapped just for no reason, it was scary.
Yeah.
And then hearing him and my mom fight, or he would give her a hard time maybe about spending money or whatever it might be, that was scary.
Sure.
As a child. And being the youngest myself of 5 kids, my brother, who was older than me, was 7 years older, and a lot of the kids were already out of the house. So I was basically, like my youngest daughter, an only child, seeing a lot of that happen.
Yeah.
So whereas they could escape and leave, I was home. And so that was difficult growing up in that, and seeing my mom, want to get my dad better. I found the AA Blue Book, which is Living One Day at a Time with an Alcoholic, when I was young. And I thought, what does that mean? What's an alcoholic? And thinking, well, my dad's not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But you don't know.
You don't. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't see him stumbling around drunk. He was a big guy, and he was able to hold his alcohol. So you might see it in his eyes or in his temper, but you really didn't see it.
Wasn't your stereotypical alcoholic
stumbling around
image.
Drunk, passed out on the couch.
Yeah.
He was pretty high functioning until the cirrhosis, or until he got pretty sick from it.
Yeah. Is your dad still living? Or
No,
he's
he passed away. I was 16 years old. October of 1981, he went into the hospital with pretty well advanced cirrhosis of the liver. He was jaundiced, His voice was raspy.
Yeah.
So the first time I saw him in the hospital, it kind of freaked me out because at that point I was 16, and you're like, Dad, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then by the next time I saw him a couple weeks later, he was already in a wheelchair, lost his capacity to walk, couldn't really even speak. And then the last time I saw him, he was in a coma. And that happened over a month.
Yeah.
And the last time I saw him was after a Friday night football game. He was in a coma, and my mom said, Becky, you need to talk to him. And I didn't know what to say.
Sure. You're 16.
Yeah. What do I say?
Yeah.
It just messed me up. So
That's very
was a
That's
relief.
traumatic for sure.
yeah, it was a relief when he died. I was actually at school taking a math test, and my friend Lori said, hey, Becky, come on, let's go to the office, because I got the slip. And I knew what it was for. And I did not want to go down to the office.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to deal with it. But my friend who didn't like math wanted to
Hey,
leave
let's
the room.
let's get the office. I remember getting those slips. You're like, yes, I'm out of class for a few minutes.
Yes. So I
Yeah.
didn't go. I waited until after school to go home because I knew what it meant. I mean, I did go down to the office, and the counselor was actually a family friend and knew my dad.
Yeah.
Because my dad played baseball on a local softball team. Pretty well established in the community, so
Yeah.
so they knew who he was.
Right. So is your mom still living?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mom's 90.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, so she actually had made him leave the house. So he was actually living someplace else. Like, there was a couple of times where she got strong and just said, you've got to go. This isn't acceptable. This isn't healthy. So when he did pass away, he wasn't living at home. So I know that it was a relief for her as well.
Yeah. How do you feel that trauma, because you're very young at that age to watch your father die in that way. How do you feel like that trauma affected you over the course of your lifetime?
It caused me to, one thing we talked about earlier was I didn't have a father who was present or a father who could parent me in a healthy way. So I never was empowered to say no, that I needed to be liked by everybody. Of course, my self-esteem was probably in the tank. Well, I can say it was. I was insecure and, just wasn't empowered. Gave in to promiscuity, because I wanted to be liked by boyfriends. And, just not very confident in friendships as well.
Sure. Yeah. Is that something you feel like you still struggle with from time? Because, our childhood, there are things that happened to me when I was a kid, that I feel like for sure played into my anxiety and depression as I got older. We all have those things that kind of make their mark on us. And oops, there's a microphone. I talk with my hands too much. And, you had mentioned that book, The Body Keeps Score.
Yeah.
I've read that book.
Yeah.
It does. These things that you go through in life, your body does keep score from them. But we don't have to walk around wounded from our trauma. It's always part of us. It's, it's, as I say, it's tattooed on us. But we don't have to walk around just completely scarred and wounded from that. So kind of talk about, what your viewpoint is on that or your experience with that. How did you overcome that, or how did that lead into something else?
I would say it probably started junior year then or senior year in high school. I got to know some people who were a lot of fun. And I realized, wow, it's fun to laugh. I was in choir in high school. So just made some good friendships. So that was the beginning of, I think, getting to a more positive persona or a positive outlook. And then in college, now I can look back and say I probably was not ready for college at all, but everybody went, so we did. And my college experience was so-so. Ended up being a German major because I studied in Germany and had enough credits. So I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And once again, that goes back to I didn't have a parent who kind of guided me or was there to help with homework, to say, you're really good at this, or you should do this. So I was kind of floundering. I mean, I did flounder. I did not, there was one class in college I did not finish. And so I had an incomplete and did not graduate for many years.
Okay.
So I think that was another sign of not finishing what I started. But began senior year in college and maybe a little bit afterwards reading positive books. Living, Loving, Learning, Leo Buscaglia. I saw him on PBS one night. The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. I found that my mom had it. So I started to read books, a lot of books on self-help. And through that, and then ultimately finding that church, the church plant in Chicago really helped too. Still floundered, got myself into a lot of credit card debt. Well, it goes on and on, kind of. Didn't graduate, didn't tell my family until later on. But ultimately becoming a believer, accepting Jesus as my Lord and Savior in May of 1988. But even then thinking, okay, this was the right thing to do. The pastor had a meeting with me and explained the whole salvation story to me. And I was baptized and okay, that's great. But still went on my merry way. 30 days later, I was fired from my job. It was a blue moon. It was May of 1988, actually Memorial Day weekend. I walked into work and there was a security person there. And they accused me of stealing money.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't, but I had found a deposit bag without the cash, but just the checks.
Okay.
A couple weeks earlier. I worked at Ann Taylor in Chicago. So I found that, and I struggled because I thought, okay, if I turn this in, they're going to think I stole it. If I don't say anything, they're going to think I stole it.
Yeah.
So what do? I reported it. But the woman said, if there had been a hidden camera in this back room, what would it have seen? And I said, it wasn't me. I did not do it. Well, whether or not you did it, we're still going to have to let you go.
Yeah.
So it was that day, actually, that I finally surrendered. And that's another good word. Surrender.
That is a good word.
I just said, okay, God, I can't do it on my own.
Yeah.
I can't live this life on my own. I've made too big of a mess of it. And from there he started putting my life back together.
Yeah. Because
when I lost that job, my immediate reaction was, I got to find a job. I got to get out and go waitress tables or whatever. But he rebuilt my life. I got a paper route. For because the pastor at the church had one, so I would get up at 4:30 in the morning to deliver papers. I was teaching aerobics at a health club there. And then finally found a job through an employment agency that just fit. And it was wonderful.
Yeah.
I named my first child after my boss.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was a Swiss manufacturing firm, and they were from Switzerland. The written language is German. The dialect is different, so I was able to use some of my German from college, but just
so the
really
puzzle pieces
good
kind of start fitting together.
Yes.
And I think it's interesting because you're like, well, I accepted Christ at this point, but life doesn't get necessarily easier.
It's not a lightning strike or a...
when you do that, like, everything's put together now. Like, yes, I've got this all figured out. No, it's often those times where you really are...
hit bottom.
Yes, in the pit. That you kind of like, okay, finally, you come to the realization that you cannot do it on your own. I mean, that's been my own personal experience, to get so low and to try everything I can do to control the situation as much as possible, only to find out that I can't control it at all.
Right.
And that you do have to surrender it to God. And there's such like freedom in that.
There is.
When you are able to do that, and just kind of say like, God, I don't know where this is going, but you do, and I can trust that.
Yeah. So that was the beginning. And then I met David at church and just was involved in singles groups. And, living in Chicago was fun, going downtown to shows or whatever else.
Sure.
So
it's fun.
We were there
Big
for
city
6
life.
years. Yeah.
Cool. So tell me about, I know you mentioned one of the things you mentioned that you have struggled with in your marriage and in your life is codependency. So talk a little bit about that and what that's looked like for you.
Okay. When I married David, or when I first met him, actually, I thought, well, he is an adult child of an alcoholic too. His mom was an alcoholic. So I thought, oh, we've got so much in common.
Yeah.
This is so wonderful. But really, it's not. You're basically just switching your codependency to another co-addict. And then found out later that he struggled with his own addiction. So it just really fit the pattern. And my need, which you're not conscious of fixing someone or having an addict in your life so that you can fit into their reality or even gain your own identity from them. And that was a huge struggle. And you don't see it at the time. You don't see it at all until you're actually getting healthier on your own or in your own way. But yeah, it was probably when I got pregnant. We were married for a few years, and I got pregnant with our first daughter that David said, Becky, we need to get help. We don't want to not throw off, but you don't want our kids to pick up these own unhealthy behaviors.
Sure.
So that was when we went to Adult Children of Alcoholics, and we began to learn more about alcoholism and then our role in it.
Yeah.
And that helped for a time, but really didn't get much better until David actually admitted that he was an addict and needed help. Because when he got help, then I got help. And that's one thing I think that's really important if you have an addict in your life or someone that struggles with whatever it may be. If that person gets help, then you do need to get help, because the lie is, well, I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's them with the problem.
Yeah.
So they need help, but not me.
Right.
I'm fine.
Right.
And that was actually a word that my mother said all my life, which is kind of a lie, which you're just fine.
Fine. I'm
She'd
fine.
say, you're just fine, Becky. You're just fine. No, I'm not.
Right.
But yeah, it wasn't until, I constantly read self-help books over the years, and I think made baby steps towards getting better. And then, of course, my faith and walk with God has helped as well. But actually going to get help for codependency or therapy for it, to do my homework for it.
Yeah. Because with codependency, you become so focused on the other person and just, supporting them or changing them or fixing them, or how are they reacting? Are they okay?
So
are
it
they
can
not
be,
okay?
that's right. If they're happy, I'm happy.
Exactly. Yeah. So your happiness kind of depends on the state that they're in, whatever that might be. And so I'm assuming you just kind of forget about yourself.
Who you are.
Exactly.
So you don't know who you are. And if the other person says, well, that's not right, or why did they say that? For example, with doctors, I just take everything they say as the God's honest truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to do this. Well, why?
Right.
David was the why person. Well, why?
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know, because he said so. And you don't question authority. And that was another struggle for me, was authority figures. Being afraid of authority figures. And always thinking that if you got called into the boss's office, you've done something wrong.
Automatically bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he got into recovery and said, Becky, you need to do something too. And it was hard to find the help for me. He had a plethora of different outlets or different resources. We did attend a couples group together, but it wasn't until really I worked through, it may have been called Codependent No More. It's a workbook by Pia Melody and a therapist. And having to actually figure out what are your behaviors that you need to avoid.
Yeah.
Like
you yourself.
me.
Yes.
Becky.
Okay.
And finding my own voice, and also realizing, being able to say, I don't want that, or I don't want to do that, or even saying no. And not being afraid of the ramifications, because the other person might not like that. Well, so what? They can take care of themselves. They need to do the thing that they need to do to take care of themselves. And you need to do the thing that you need to do to take care of you.
Yeah.
And so that's what I learned, and I think that was one of the most empowering things. One other thing that helped me, or maybe helped me realize, we had gone to a couples therapy group, and it was a group. It was different couples struggling with different things. But one of the mentors said, "Becky, you need to find your voice." Mm-hmm. And it's true, I didn't have a voice. Mm-hmm. And even though physically I may have a loud voice.
Right. Yeah.
And so in doing so, that I've found my voice. I can say no. But sometimes, life trips you up or things happen. You realize, oh, I'm going back to that behavior.
You're reverting back.
Yeah. There's different situations that cause that. But you have the tools and the options to fall back on in order to get through whatever difficult period that might be.
Right. What do you think is like, if somebody that's listening maybe is identifying with some things that you're saying, they're going through their own difficult time, like what would be your number one piece of advice?
Probably find a great therapist, do homework on your own, find a mentor or life coach or somebody that can help you or hold you accountable to doing your homework, because sometimes it's hard.
It is hard.
Sometimes it's painful, and you don't want to go back to that moment or that point and look at yourself in that moment. Sometimes it's just too painful.
Yeah. I agree 100% because the things that I've worked through in my life, it's taken so much inner work, and it is terribly difficult to, and honestly, we have these things that happen to us in our life, and then we just really kind of want to bury them away. We don't want to look at them anymore. Our incident when we went through very violent situation, I didn't want to go to therapy about that because I didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to honestly pretend like it didn't happen.
Yep.
And I think for a long time, I don't think I suppressed that. And then it's kind of like, well, good luck with that. You can't just pretend like this thing didn't happen because it eventually comes up in other ways. And so I think what you're saying is so important, but like having your people around you, finding your safe people, your support system, the therapist, the life coach, whatever that might be, that you can plug into. Because I think a lot of people kind of feel, whether it's spoken or unspoken, that they have to figure this out on their own. Yeah. And I would say to someone, like, don't try and do it all on your own. Right. It's typically too much to do on your own. Yeah. You need a good support system. Yep. 100%.
Find that safe sounding board, that person you can speak to that's going to say it's okay. Yeah.
And honestly, that's why I like to do these podcasts, because I think people need to hear about other people that have gone through difficult times and say, hey, it's okay. Like, I'm going through something too. Maybe it's different, but like if they got through it, I can get through whatever I'm going through, So
yeah, it's not hopeless.
No,
it's never hopeless.
There's always an opportunity to be able to turn things around. So where are you and your husband at today? How's life? How's marriage? How's everything?
Much better. He has 8 years of sobriety, and we call it sobriety, under his belt. Yeah. And we have weekly check-in meetings. Okay. Every Saturday, we have a list of questions, and I think they're helpful in any sort of relationship or marriage. But the first question is, what are your bottom line behaviors, and have you had any breaks or potential breaks? And when we say bottom line behaviors, we say, what are those things you need to avoid that are not good for you? Yeah. Like me, checking up on him. What are the things that, like, finding out things or going into his phone or computer and see what he's been up to. And that's one of the things, that's one of my things I need to avoid. Yeah. One of my bottom line behaviors. And then there's a few others, some things like boundaries. Yeah. Boundary issues.
Well, because let's just back up a little bit. If you're going into his phone or his computer, there's that lack of trust. Right. So that's not good for the relationship. So
right. And he said, you can look at whatever you want. Yeah. But, and that's kind of how it's always been, just be ready to see what you might see. And I had read one of his journals early on, and because he was keeping, as he first got into recovery, he was keeping track of different things. Yeah. And I read it and I got so mad. I just, but had to go to a meeting and couldn't talk to him until later. So anyway, but I think we're we're at a healthier point than we've ever been. We're with ourselves with each other. If there's a conflict, we can talk through it.
Yeah.
But that check-in meeting, the next question is, describe your general emotional state for the last week.
Okay.
How have you felt?
Yeah.
In a few words.
Yeah.
And then tell about what you were learning, whether it's through books, strategies, aha moments, whatever.
Yeah.
And then it is tell about what you're thankful for. I know that's not the next question, but basically telling what you're thankful for. Are there any grudges or amends you need to make? And that can be with each other or with somebody else.
Yeah.
Let's say you're holding on to anger about something that you know you need to mend.
Yeah.
That you need to go to that person and say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then what are you looking forward to in the next week? So there's good things and there's difficult things. And that's kind of our time to share. If something didn't come up during the week that was major, that's our time to talk and say.
I like that a lot because I'm thinking even if you don't have like an addiction issue or a marriage, that's like a great thing to do really just in a relationship because, you know, I think about like Lindsay and I, you're so busy like day in, day out. Sometimes you're just kind of in passing. Yeah. And like how often you live with this person, you sleep in the same bed, but like, are you actually talking? Exactly. And like sitting down and like, how are you? You know, how really are you? And I think that's really, a great thing to do to just have that like weekly check-in. 100%. I love that. Yeah.
And that can be the same thing with a mentor or a life coach too, or whatever else. A good friend, you know, to talk about whatever you might be struggling with. It's kind of a good guide for whatever conversation you might need to have.
Right. Because typically when we say like, how are you? It's the whole, I'm fine.
Exactly. And then do people really want to hear you when you say, not so good
No, I'm
today.
actually not fine. Let me tell you
okay,
what's
good.
going
See
on.
ya. Have a good day. You know, they come in to get your coffee. They ask you how you're doing.
Yeah.
And great. I'm great.
Yeah.
No, I'm not so good. You know, and they don't really want to hear it.
Yeah.
That's true.
It is, but a lot of times we just need to unload a little bit, and you feel so much better. So when you first got here, we weren't going to talk about this, but then you mentioned this. I was like, oh, we got to talk about that. So tell me about, you went to the missionary field, you and your husband, because that's what you first came back here to do, was raise money for that. So you eventually go.
Yeah, we went to the mission field. We'd been married for 5 years. We had 2 kids.
Where did you go?
We went to Chile, South America to be church planters, and we went to Costa Rica for a year first to learn Spanish in San Jose at the Spanish Language Institute. We had 2 kids, and of course my mom said, are you taking the kids with you? You're not leaving the United States. And then it was much safer. It was a different world back then. But went to language school and then lived in Chile, South America for 3.5 years. Planted a small church, and I think in the end, the more important thing was the few people that God used, or that God used us to lead to the Lord. Yeah. We didn't have a huge amount of conversions. You know, it wasn't like countries like Africa or some stories you hear where, you know, you just have a huge amount of people coming to faith. Yeah. It was small and it was difficult. It was like a middle class neighborhood we lived in. Got to know the neighbors very well. And there was one thing I learned actually out of that, and that is sometimes God has to take us out of the picture in order for people to come.
To fulfill something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the other thing. So we were there for 3.5 years, came home, we're planning to go back. And David just had a sense that we weren't going to go back. And so he told me that, and I said, no way. We're going.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
I want to hear that. So you obviously liked it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was hard at first. You go through your culture shock, of course.
I can imagine.
But I had a baby down there.
Okay, wow.
A little Chileno, a little boy, James, our third born.
Yeah.
And that really drew people to us because we had a national. With our neighbors, everybody loved him. Everybody wanted to help. So I think it really, is it the word ingratiated us to our neighbors and the people we worked with?
What's giving birth down there I mean, it's
that's
got to
another
be
story.
just, that's like a whole nother podcast, right?
Oh, it is.
It's got to be like a whole different world. I can't even imagine.
So this would have been 1997, and it was like the U.S. in the 1960s. They shaved you. I don't want to get too TMI, but the birthing table was flat, and they wanted me to lie on my back and put my feet up high in stirrups, and you hear all that in Lamaze when you have kids here these days. No, you want to be up and walking around. You want to be in a sitting position. So he didn't come on the due date, and the doctor said, okay, use a suppository, and you're going to come to the hospital. Put it in after midnight. You're going to come to the hospital the next day at 8 o'clock. You're going to walk in. You're going to have your baby. I said, okay, great.
Sounds good.
I know, right? As if life were so
I'll be having lunch by noon. I'll be like,
all right,
what we
so
always think, right?
I went to bed, did the suppository, and by 2:30 I was having hard contractions. So
2:30
in the morning.
In the morning, yeah.
So I got up, and I thought, okay, this is number 3 with this one. I'm going to take my time. I'm not going to rush the hospital because I'll just lay around doing nothing. So I made their lunches. I took a shower. I kept myself busy, and finally went into the bedroom about 5:20 in the morning to David and said, we got to go.
Yeah.
We got to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Which really it was a clinic. It was a private clinic. They have subsidized medicine in Chile. And so you had your public hospitals and your private hospitals, and we were going to a private clinic. So we get in the car and we go, and we get there to the emergency room, and the lights are off. It's dark.
Okay.
There's nobody there.
There's nobody at the emergency room. You're like, hello.
No, I know. So we walk
Getting
in.
ready to
At
have a
least the
baby.
door did open. We get in there. David starts yelling for somebody.
Yeah.
Hey, anybody here?
Yeah.
Finally, a sleepy attendant walks out. And I'm leaning against the wall, huffing and puffing, trying to keep from having this child because contractions are pretty rough by that point. So he comes out, brings out a wheelchair, and we go into the elevator to go up to the maternity ward. My water breaks while I'm sitting on the wheelchair in the elevator, and that's never happened before. So we get up there, and I walk into, well, of course, it's quiet on the maternity ward, lights are off, everybody's in bed. Nothing is happening. The nurses come out and take me to a room to check to see if I'm dilated. They tell me nothing. I said, is it too late for an epidural? And they didn't say anything. They just sent me on to the next room, which was like the birthing room.
Yeah.
And that was where I saw the flat table. And they're, start to get the room ready. I feel like I need to start pushing.
Yeah.
So I get on the table on all fours and invert my head to keep from having this baby. So they're asking me my name, my doctor's name, all that stuff. And I finally yell, David, get in here, because they left him in the other room.
Okay.
They wouldn't let him come in. He comes in, sees the head crowning. And mind you, remember, I'm on all fours. And he comes up and stands next to me on the table, or at the table, and the nurse tries to get me to go onto my back. And there's no way. I wasn't going to move. So he starts arguing with the nurse about they do this in other countries and they come out fine.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And James was born.
It's like, yeah, I'm going to take care of this.
That's right. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of his personality. But
That's hilarious.
she grabbed him, or one of them grabbed him.
Yeah.
I don't remember that because I was facing the other way. But he came out on his own. So that was my birth story.
There you go. I love it.
In another country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so David always said that if you ever have another baby, we're coming to the United States to have it born.
Yeah.
But that was wild. It was
I'm
wild.
sure. I cannot even imagine. Yeah. Like, I'm sure all the women that are going to listen to this are going to totally, because that's just, I don't know, it's even like intimidating to me to think about doing that
in a foreign country.
Yes, in a foreign country.
I had
100%.
a good doctor.
Yeah.
And she did arrive. The pediatrician was our neighbor. So that was awesome. He actually arrived before the doctor did. So he could take care of the baby.
Yeah.
But she showed up to sew me up, and
It's just one of those trust things. It's
charged
like,
me full price.
You didn't even get a discount.
No discount for birthing on my own.
Missionary discount, yes, I think you should have gotten that. That's great. So you guys have been back from the missions field for a number of years now.
Since 2000.
Okay, all right.
About this time.
So what are you doing now? Because I know that there's like some new things coming, and we were talking. I think you and I kind of have this like common thing, because you said what you are doing now, you feel like everything that's happened has led up to that, and that God has really been guiding you. And I said, I feel the exact same about all of this, that, you know, I'm doing my work and everything. So what are you doing?
It's not for nothing.
Exactly.
I am opening a yoga studio.
Yes.
And I'm very excited. It'll be called Sunflower Yoga. One, because it's my favorite flower, and two, it's just easy to remember. And it's happy.
Yeah.
It's a happy
Sunflowers
flower.
are always happy.
Yeah.
Right around the corner from us, like literally 2 blocks over.
Yeah, it'll be great. It's in the Dora district. It's at 120 South Center Street. It's in the corner of the Heritage Center. So that room or that space has been kind of curtained off with black boards for a long time, so nobody ever notices it.
Yeah.
So it'll be a bright spot. I'm looking forward to it. Close
the Heritage
to everything.
Center, for people that don't know who aren't local, is an amazing historical, beautiful building in downtown Springfield. Used to be the marketplace when I was growing up. My mom actually worked there in the little floral store for a long time, City Flowers, way back in the day. But it is such a cool building, like tons of history. Same way with this building, you know, the Bushnell building. We got so much history, you know, here. So it's going to be a really cool space. What are you doing? I know you're doing yoga, but also some other things there as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm working at Winans, but I wanted to just backtrack real quick. When we got settled here in the States, we bought a house on South Fountain in the historic district. So have always had a love for old buildings, old historic structures. Moved to the south side of Springfield. Of course, people thought we were crazy then, you know, but you just really see a resurgence on that side of town and downtown. So, with that in mind as well, the space at the Heritage Center was wonderful.
Yeah.
So getting ready to open that April 1st, and then working as a barista at Winans has been just opened a lot of doors to meet different people and get the word out.
I love it. Coffee and yoga.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
I'm going to serve coffee there. I've got my air pots on order. I've gotten my coffee maker. I'm going to serve coffee, and we get to use the courtyard space, which is right there as well. So in the summertime, we can do coffee outside afterwards, or wind down evenings, you know, wind down yoga on Fridays or whatever, and have a glass of wine afterwards. So it's just, a lot of opportunity there.
I love it. I love it. And you're going to also have like some meditation hours, like come in and just be quiet, just, you know, prayer, meditate, that kind of thing.
On
which
the
I
off
think
time, when there's not classes going on.
I think is so awesome. And a lot of people, I think a lot of some believers even get a little like woo-woo about meditation. Yeah. Speak to that a little bit, because meditation has helped me a ton with my anxiety, with depression. Like, how do you use meditation?
I use it as a time to breathe and let go. I think that it can be well incorporated into the Christian walk, because God basically said, you know, to meditate on his words, or to focus on his words, or to think about such things. And that all plays into taking a moment and being by yourself. And it's not necessarily emptying your mind, but just being still. And focusing on your breathing, because the breath is an anchor. It's something that is eternal. We're always, you know, until we breathe our last breath.
Yes.
So beginning there, and just either thinking about a word or a scripture verse, it can be anything.
Yeah.
So I think that just spending quiet time alone.
Right.
Is what's important, and that's what will be available for people, whether they want to do it with another person or by themselves. And that's why I'm so excited to have that garden area, because people can sit outside in the garden and meditate there, or come inside and be there when there's not a class going on. So
yeah. When I think of meditation, I think of like intention. You know, I really feel like it comes down to the intention of your thoughts, which in my opinion, we have to gain control of our thoughts if we're ever going to get over a lot of this stuff that happens. Everybody is going through something. Everybody, you know, has these experiences that make their mark on us. And we really have to become masters at controlling our own mind. And I think that's why, you know, I've gravitated towards meditation over the years, is because it's a tool that's helped me to do that, you know, and have that intention. So I think that's great that you're going to offer that. Last thing I'm going to ask you about is, you said this morning you were reading some of your old journals, and you said that's always interesting to do, and that's something that I do. I'm a huge journal person. You know, it's one of my main things that I do, and I've had journals throughout the years, and I go back and I read them, and it is such a like important tool, because you really can see like how far you have come and like the place that you were in, you know, at this certain time, and now I'm in this place. So what was your experience when you were reading your journal, your old journals this morning?
I was thinking, boy, I'm in such a much better place right now than I was then.
Yeah.
But also just seeing, one of them was The Blessing of Brokenness, I think I was reading, and I was reading through what are the things that you need to let go of in your life right now, or what is God breaking you of? And looking back at those things, and of course coming back from the mission field and not going back, letting go of that dream, I guess, at that point. That's where I was, because we had sort of fallen off the pedestal and needed to accept that being misunderstood was okay, because at that point we were misunderstood.
You mean the pedestal that people had put you on as missionaries, and then when you're not going back, they're all like, oh, what are, you know, why are you not going back, kind of thing. And
like I said, and just realizing that there are many characters in the Bible that were misunderstood, and that we are going to be misunderstood sometimes, and that's okay.
It is okay.
Yeah. So, reading all that, just thinking, wow, in a much better place now, much more confidence, not so much stressing over money, stressing over where we're going to live, all of that. And then intermixed in that journal were some drawings by my kids.
Okay.
Jacob was 6, Beatrice was 8. And Beatrice drew flowers and birdies and bunnies and horses, and Jake is drawing sharks and military guys, you know, or dragons.
Right. Yeah.
I thought that was so cute.
Very sweet.
So over the years, going through therapy, that's one other thing that I have really developed a compassion for, and that's kids. Seeing what we had gone through as children, and parenting that inner child, and seeing other little kids and realizing they're just kids.
Yeah.
You know, that abundant enthusiasm that little kids have.
Yeah.
And we just try to squelch it as adults, because we want them to be quiet or behave, or it's an expression of you, so you want them to make a good impression.
Sure.
But yeah, much better place now.
Love it. Well, I appreciate you coming in. I think there's been so many like good things that you've said today. I've certainly taken away some stuff. I'm going to do the weekly check-in. I like that a lot, you know?
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you being open and willing to tell your story, because I know it's going to encourage a lot of people.
Yeah, anybody who wants to meet with me, I'm on Facebook. Yeah,
I'm glad you said that. Where can people find you on Facebook? Where can they find out more about the yoga studio and kind of what you're doing?
Yoga studio is on Facebook under Sunflower Yoga. And then our website will be www.sunfloweryogaspringfield. We had to make that long .com because there's a lot of sunflower used.
Sure.
And Sunflower Yoga is the same on Facebook.
And you're Becky Smiddy on Facebook. Or Rebecca on
Moker Smiddy. Yes, okay. I come from a German family.
Yeah.
So I guess that was another reason why I like studying in Germany, but it's Moecher. It looks like Mocher.
Okay, cool. And we'll put the link to
Yeah.
the yoga studio
Yeah,
and
do
all
that.
that stuff when we post the podcast. So
I'm at Winans Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday in the mornings if you want to come say hi,
Yeah.
or Friday evenings. So just find me if you want to talk or share anything else.
love that. I appreciate you coming in. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
All right, we're good.
Are we?
Yeah. And just
Da, da,
take
da,
it
da.
off. Yeah.